All right, everyone. Good morning, mushrooms. Welcome to the One Room Mushroom Farm. We are in a separate room today. I hate to disappoint you, but sometimes we use second room, third room even. You know, it can't always be one room mushroom farm. It's a little unrealistic, right? But for the most part, it is a one room mushroom farm. Today we're going to make some bags for growing mushrooms in. These are the final step in the mushroom growing process. The bags consist of 50-50 mix of soy hull pellets and hardwood fuel pellets. And to make these bags, you can make 5-pound bags. You can make 10-pound bags. You can really make whatever size you want to at the end of the day. But the ratio I use is 60% hydration. I think that's pretty standard. Which with 60% hydration, that means you're going to want 906 grams of Master's Mix. This is called Master's Mix, by the way. And on top of that 906 grams, you're going to want 1,400 grams of water. So there's your 906 grams. And like I said, this is just sawdust and soy hull pelletized. We're going to tear that, and we're going to throw in 1,400 grams of water. Now, I used to use a measuring cup to do this. Definitely easier to do it with these jugs. This is just tap water. You know, it's in a distilled water container, but it's just tap water. And it's going to seem like it's not very much at first. The thing about this sawdust is it expands quite a bit. In fact, I made 10-pound bags, and I decided that was just too big. Wouldn't even be able to fit 4 bags in my pressure cooker of 10-pound bags, I don't think. Hopefully this water is not too loud. So we're at 1,400. Now, this part, I don't see everybody do this part, but I believe in it. I think it's a good idea. I have these Tyvek strips here. This is just house wrap from Tyvek. Reason we use this is to prevent possible catastrophe, which is, I don't know how likely it is, but when you're preventing a catastrophe, it's never really too much to do. But the idea is if you don't do this, or at least if you aren't careful and attentive to your pressure cooker while you're using it, which, you know, we all try to be careful and attentive, but I'm sure everybody can admit it doesn't always happen. The pressure cooker can cause steam to collect inside the bag and pressurize the bag if the bag is somehow not able to vent the air. And that can cause the bag to expand inside the pressure cooker, which theoretically can cause the air outlet of the pressure cooker to be blocked off, which that situation is where you actually start to get into a danger zone. So you use the Tyvek strip, fold it down like this, and you'll see there's a bunch of water in here still. We'll just let it sit. It'll expand. We'll just sit it over here. You'll see it expand throughout the video. I'll just leave that sitting right there. Usually when I do this, I'll have something to put on top of the bag. That way it doesn't unfold on itself. Sometimes I use like a spoon or something. Whatever you have handy. So here's a little bit of a closer look at that Master's Mix. And once again, I just buy this at my local feed store. They use it, I think, for feeding horses ultimately, as far as the soybean pellets go. And then the larger pellets in here are the hardwood fuel pellets. And that's actually used for heating your house in the wintertime. Would be wondering how available that's going to be in the summertime. I have no idea. This is my first year doing this. So I bought quite a bit of hardwood pellets when I bought them because I was worried that it's not going to come summertime. It might not be as easy to find. But this process is really pretty quick. You know, obviously I'm sitting here talking to you guys. It takes longer for me because I can't pay as much attention to what I'm doing. And you know, one secret is you pay attention to what you put in there and pour it slowly. You don't have to take as much out. And it doesn't have to be exactly 906. I mean, you know, we're not going to put exactly 1,400 milliliters of water either. But you want it to be pretty close. Because consistency is a good thing when it comes to growing mushrooms. And I just use this little bowl here to make it a little bit easier to stay on the scale. Make sure nothing drapes off the edge as far as the water and sawdust goes and causes it to give me a bad reading. Now, when you're pouring liquids, you want to be more careful because you can't take the liquid out as easily unless you want to reach in there with a little spoon or a cup, and I'm not messing with that right now. But you do want to be careful because if you put too much in here, it may not grow properly. Might have more chance for contamination. There we're at. 1402, close enough. And you want to fold your bag down properly too. These look dirty. Keep in mind this is just sawdust from the last. It's just sawdust from the last one I did. And it's going to be sterilized. We want to make sure these folds are pretty straight. You know, some people say that and when you don't use this Tyvek, the bag will self-seal in the pressure cooker, which seems like a great idea, right? But, you know, at the end of the day, I can put this up in front of my flow hood, and that's what I did last time at least, and there was no contamination issues that I had with my other blocks I've done. You can already see this one's starting to expand quite a bit, and it'll continue to expand. Plus, we're going to be putting some grain in here, so it'll get bigger. I'll just refold this one real quick. You do want to keep them nice and folded and make sure they don't get messed up, because when you open these and reseal them, you want the folds to still be there, and it's going to go through a lot of temperature, and that temperature could cause the plastic to deform a little bit. And if you lose your folds, it's a little bit harder to seal them. It doesn't look as nice when you're done, which is, you know, obviously not as important. The looks are not as important as the end result, right? So we're taking these, and we're setting them inside the pressure cooker. And I do 4 of these bags per 1 pressure cooker cook. You know, I think you could do more potentially, but I like to leave a little bit of space. There's no reason to fill it up all the way. And once again, you're kind of risking that potential of an accident happening. And I don't know how likely that really is. People are probably going to come on here and say that's a dumb idea. You're not going to worry about your pressure cooker blowing up, or just pay attention to it. But hey, sometimes I get lazy. Sometimes I forget. You know, I obviously don't want to do it with the pressure cooker. But if I ruin my pressure cooker is one thing, if I have it explode in my house is a little bit different. So I'll take my chances, do what I can do. And this Tyvek is not hard to put in. It didn't take very long at all to throw it in there. I think most people would complain that the concern is that you're not going to get a self-sealing bag using that. Well, the guy who I watched that told me to use this said, well, hey, why would you want your bag to self-seal? It's just going to have a vacuum effect and suck in the air that you let in either way when you open it, no matter what. So you could take this Tyvek here, and it's a porous material, so air will get through there, but you shouldn't expect very much bacteria to get through it, or any. I don't know. I'm not going to sit here and debate about it. I don't know the answer. But it seemed like a good idea when I watched the guy doing it. So I'm going to go ahead and do it. And I take good ideas and I listen to them. And someone comes on here and convinces me that's a bad idea. Maybe I'll change the way I do it. So this is our 3rd bag. I'll just do 4 bags on this video. See, we messed up. We put a little bit too much water in this one. And I don't know what the best solution is for that. But my solution is just going to be to add a little bit more of this. You know, 10 grams of water. Probably not a big deal. You add 5 grams of pellets, it's probably the same thing, right? You know, it's not an exact science here. I'm not trying to say we need to measure every single pellet. But if you go over a little bit in one direction, try to go over the other direction too. As far as water goes, talking about water and master's mix, obviously. So, try to get it between the folds a little bit if I can, just so there's still a good area to fold. You want to keep your fold going all the way down. And you really want your Tyvek to touch the mushroom substrate, because that's going to be your airflow path from the mushroom substrate all the way up to the Tyvek. And you know, there's still water in here. Looks kind of weird, crazy, doesn't it? But it's fine. You throw it in there. The water will all get absorbed. It's not going to be a problem. So now that we got our first mushroom block in there, I'm sorry, our first 3 mushroom blocks in there, the top mushroom block is holding down the, here, I'll show you. The top mushroom block is holding down the tabs for the other 2. As you can see, it's not the best weight to use, but it's fine. We'll get through it. So we'll do our last mushroom block for this pressure cooker, and then we'll go downstairs and turn the stove on, show you how to operate the pressure cooker briefly. You know, I'm not an expert. I'm not going to pretend that I'm the guy that should be teaching you how to do that. But I watched a video, so you can watch me do it, see if you learn anything. All right, once again, 906 of Master's Mix. I figure I can do 4 of these bags every couple of weeks or every week. Get a good supply going. Keep grain spawn bags going alongside that. You know, I don't know how many mushrooms I want to grow at a time, because I've never harvested any mushrooms. I've never been on the other side of it yet, you know. So here's our last 1,400 grams of water. 1.4 liters, if you want to call it liters. And yeah, I'm really much happier with how they're just distilled water jugs. They pour a lot better than what I was using before, which was just the sink. You know, you can spill water pretty easily doing that, or get water on your scale, now your scale doesn't work anymore. That's happened to me in the past with cooking, you know. Not something you want to do in the middle of this. Go look for a new scale. And I think something really important to mention, and I always try to think about this, you're not going to have success every time you do something. It's important to fail. It's important to learn from that failure, obviously, but you have to have the failure to learn from it. You can't learn, I mean, you can still learn without failing, but it's not the same. You don't get the same takeaways from it unless you fail. So if I put a little bit too much water in, maybe I'll be more careful next time. Or if I find out, hey, it doesn't really matter, there's a little bit too much water, maybe I'll be less careful next time. You know, this is probably taking twice as long as it takes other people to do. I imagine somebody who's making 100 bags a day would laugh at me just based on the idea of doing these individually. And they would say, you know, put your 100 pounds of mix in this tub, put this much water in, mix it all up, make sure it's hydrated, and then do your bags. But we're all doing stuff at a different level, at a different speed, for different reasons. And I'm doing this on a small scale right now. Like, I want to start a business. I'd like to sell these mushrooms to people. But you got to start somewhere. And this is where I'm starting. If I don't have a bagging machine, I don't have a technical process and employees, that's fine. I don't need it. I can still start doing something. That's my main takeaway from this project. If you want to do something, all you have to do is actually start. Because if you start doing it, like this project started with me remodeling that whole room. But if I wouldn't have said, I'm just going to do it, we would still be at square one. We'd still be thinking about what would it be like to start a mushroom farm? What would it be like to have a business? Or, you know, we're not in the thinking about it stage. We're doing it. So if you do, that's great. You can move forward. So I'm just putting this on top, kind of the same idea to keep the mushroom substrate blocks from expanding too much and blocking off the ports. And once that's in there, you know, everything's secure. I can leave it, show you again what it looks like inside there. Oh, you got 4 mushroom blocks in there. You got, at the bottom of the pressure cooker, there's actually 4 small jars, which I put in there just so there's not too much water getting up into the bags. One thing I noticed too is you put, I think, 3 liters of water in that pressure cooker. There's a line in there. You're supposed to read the instructions before you use it, and I recommend that to everybody. You put 3 liters of water in there. And then the water's really close to filling up your mushroom blocks, or mushroom blocks, and I don't want to put extra water in there. So that was it. We made 4. You know, I'll come back off camera and make these other 4, just because I wanted to show you guys what the process was like. And I'll go downstairs now, start this up on the pressure cooker on the stove, and we'll talk a little bit about how that works, and see you in a bit. So here's a closer look at what's going on inside the pressure cooker. I have these 2 bags at the bottom. I have the 1 bag up here now. It's important to understand that these bags are going to expand quite a bit when you put them in here. Matter of fact, you shouldn't even be putting these in the pressure cooker until all of the sawdust has expanded fully. I have waited now about a half hour for this to expand out. And also keep in mind, I've done this exact same 4 bags on my pressure cooker before, so I know they're not going to expand to be too large in this pressure cooker with this amount of blocks. But it's really important that when you do this, you let everything expand all the way before you put any heat on it and before you put it in the pressure cooker, because you don't want to overpressure this thing. These pressure cookers can explode, as unlikely as it might be. You can really mess it up. Mess up your house too. So just make sure you let everything expand first. This thing's starting to go. As you can see, it's starting to steam. I'm going to get the lid back on it here, and we're going to get rolling. Alright guys, we're down at the oven now. We're going to be putting our bags onto the stove, starting up our pressure cooker. Now there is 3 liters of water in here. You always want to read your instructions on your pressure cooker before you do anything. Don't do this off my advice. You know, this thing looks safe, but it's relatively dangerous if you don't do it correctly. So we lock it down, and I started out on high temperature. Now what you're going to want to do, first off, you know the pressure cooker usually comes with a weight. This weight will go up here. But you don't want to put that weight on now, because something I don't see people mention very much is you're supposed to let the air vent out of these pressure cookers. So that little vent right there is going to vent air out for 10 minutes at high pressure on steam. And if you don't do that, you may not get accurate readings on the old gauge. So you'll also see this pop up. It's a little popped up now just because there's stuff in there, but it's not pushed up. It's just popped up because that plate's in there sitting kind of sideways. So we'll wait till this pressurizes. I'll show you what it looks like when the steam's going, and then I'll show you what it looks like once it's actually cooking. We're starting to get some bubbling around this, but as you can see, it's still being held up just by the mushroom blocks, by that plate in there. It's not actually popped up yet, so it's definitely not ready. We're starting to see some steam out of here, but this isn't what we're looking for yet. This is just a little bit of bubbling steam. You'll see this happen as it gets up to temperature. It usually takes 15, maybe even 20 minutes to do this. You got to remember you're heating up a bunch of water and a bunch of mushroom substrate, which also contains a lot of water. So we wait for this to completely pop up to the point where if you push it down, you'll see steam. I'll show you. You'll see steam bust out of it. And this thing will be at a high pressure, blowing steam out. And once that starts, we start venting the air at that point. That's when you start your 10-minute timer. So we'll come back when we see that. So now we're at the point where we would start our 10-minute timer to start venting the air from the pressure cooker. You can probably hear it. There's a good amount of steam coming off of that. You can see it too. And if you were to look at this, it's fully extended. And if you tap it, all you're getting out of there is, steam. So you want to do this to let all the air vent out, and you want to do this for 10 minutes. Now it's important not to go too long on this type of process because you do not want to let the water dry up out of this pressure cooker. That's the number one way people ruin these, is by letting the water dry out. And it can cause the bottom to get too hot and it'll actually warp and become unsafe to use. So we're going to put a timer on for 10 minutes. We'll come back after 10 minutes to put the weight on, and we'll talk a little bit about pressure regulation and maintaining the pressure cooker safely. I also want to do a quick note here about portable hot plates. I purchased a 1500 watt hot plate from Amazon. I thought it would work. It did not work. And if you have a portable hot plate, please, if this process of heating it up to vent the air, if you're not getting this vent happening after about 20, even 30 minutes max, you should probably just try something else, because you don't want to take too long and let too much steam out and then still try to sterilize your mushroom blocks for 2.5 hours, because you're going to end up running out of water. Ask me how I know. We're back at the 10-minute mark. We're still at 0 psi, and we're still venting from the venting port. Now it's time to put the weight on. We just put it right on there like that. And you should hear very little steam coming out. And we wait until this dial is at 15 psi. We will also hear this start to rattle. I do leave it at high temperature now on my highest setting on my stove just to get it up there to the highest temperature. Once we're at 15 psi, we're going to go ahead and lower that down to about a 6. But it's important that you keep watching this. You don't want to walk away from your pressure cooker, go outside and do chores for 2 hours and come back. You want to be near where you can hear it. So we'll come back at 15 psi. All right, we're back and we're at 15 psi on the pressure cooker. And you can see that our weight is rocking back and forth. This is what you want to see. Now, keep in mind this is very hot. When you pick it up, be careful not to touch the sides. Even the rim is going to be very, very hot. What you want to keep in mind is you don't need to keep it at high temperature right now. You're basically doing a battle between the heat of the stove, how fast that can heat it up, and the cooling of the steam coming out of this weight, and how fast that can cool down. So pumping more heat into that is just going to cause you to use the water up faster. It's not really going to improve your sterilization. The main thing is that this thing is rocking back and forth. You want it rocking back and forth fairly slowly. It's about where it needs to be right now. But if you left it on high, it would be going much faster. You don't want that. You're just going to run out of water and end up with a ruined pressure cooker. So this is on the timer for 2.5 hours. We'll pick it up and put it up in front of the flow hood once it's off and wait for it to depressurize. And I'll meet you up there. All right, we're back upstairs in the one-room mushroom farm. We got the fan on, so it's going to be pretty loud. I'll try to speak up here. Last night, we were able to get all these bags unloaded from the pressure cooker. Let it cool down for about a half hour. I don't like to leave them in the pressure cooker. Cool down, more of a personal preference thing. I just like the idea of being able to use my pressure cooker again right away instead of waiting overnight for it to be ready. So I'm just taking this grain spawn bag and I'm thoroughly getting it clean. Everything's been sprayed down. I sprayed down everything last night before I put the bags out. Everything should be pretty sterile already. I got my alcohol-soaked wipe here, just a paper towel. For your gloves, you want to make sure they're tight. You don't want to have very many cracks, or sorry, not cracks, but creases in your gloves, because that's a good place for bacteria to hide. And we're just going to wipe this bag off, get it ready. We'll be doing 4 of these 4 grain bags today that I made yesterday. Sorry, they're not grain bags. We'll be doing 4 of these 5-pound production blocks. So I got these little scissors here. Once again, just make sure everything's very sterile. It might seem overkill using this much rubbing alcohol, and maybe it is, but I'd rather be safe than sorry. So for this bag, we're just going to cut a nice little corner out so we can pour it easily. You know, generally speaking, you want to be able to pour it out, but you don't want to be able to let too much out. So there's your bag opened up. Well, that could have gone a little bit better. But, you know, not everything has to go perfect. Alright, now we're ready to start pouring the grain. Now, if you're doing this, you want to try to keep your hands away from being on top of stuff as much as possible. You want to try to keep the bags within the flow hood. You notice my arms are not over top of these bags right now. Try to keep everything inside the flow hood if you can. Understand that you may not be able to do that always. But you want to keep everything right here in front of this flow to keep it as clean as possible. So we'll open this up, take our grain spawn, and just, well, putting as little as possible of the bag over top of the other bag. We're going to put in about 1/4 of it here. You know, it's not an exact science. Definitely just spilled some all over the floor. You'll have that happen sometimes. I'm realizing this is probably enough grain spawn for more than 4 bags. Alright, so you get it in there. You don't want to mess around with it too much while it's still open. Your main goal is to get it sealed quickly. feel it for 10 seconds and you count for 10 more seconds. And I thought this thing was plugged in, but apparently it's not. Dang it. Well, that's just disappointing. Of course, usually you don't want to be handling a plug-in and dirty stuff while you're doing this. And maybe I should even change my gloves right now, but here we are. Back to what we were doing. I usually have it on about 6. Try this again. And when you do this, you gotta be careful your bag's not trying to pull away. That's one thing I learned. If your bag's trying to pull away, the plastic will melt and it'll pull the plastic apart instead of sealing it. So I hold the bag up close to it while I'm sealing it. And then also when I peel it off, wait a second for it to cool down, peel it from the back. Should keep it from becoming unsealed. And I always check my seals, and if it looks good, I'll do another seal real quick. Nothing wrong with having 2 seals. And we got a pretty good seal on that one. I'm going to call that good. We're just going to set it to the side for now. We're not ready to shake it up yet. We're going to keep doing these bags. And since I was standing over this one a little bit, I'm going to spray it off before I go too crazy here. Okay. Even after touching that spray bottle, I'm washing my hands one more time. Okay. It's important to be clean here. Get it opened up a little bit more this time. Maybe we won't spill as much grain. And I'm going to be pretty generous with this because I've got a lot of grain here. I don't think you can really use too much grain necessarily. So obviously you can be more efficient. That's the one thing you can think about. But if I'm putting twice as much grain as I need, I don't think it's going to hurt anything. Alright, getting it down in there. Make sure it's nice and flat. And we wait 10 seconds. Checking it out, and that's a good seal. I don't know if you can see that very well, but it looks good to me. We're going to double it up, just for safety. And we got what looks like 2 good seals there. Every time I go to the side, every time I take my hands out of the flow hood, even every time I do this, I'll just clean this stuff down again real quick. Nothing wrong with being extra clean. Only problem is you go through a lot of alcohol. But is that really a problem when you're producing mushrooms? I don't think it is. That's part of the deal. Everybody I saw is going through a lot of alcohol. And I opened up this bag, but it's in front of this still air box, this clean air flow hood. You know, it's pretty safe to open it up here. We're going to use most of the grain, leaving about half of it for the last bag. And even when I put this bag down, it's within the flow hood. The opening's right here. Flow hood should be clean right here still. You know, you get to the edges of it and you have less laminar flow, you have more likelihood of contamination. But in all reality, this flow hood's been running on high speed all night. 8 hours, 10 hours, 12 hours actually, more like. This air in this room should be pretty darn clean already. Just from this flow hood running. This is a highly efficient HEPA filtration system. So even if I wasn't in front of the flow hood directly, pretty low chance I'm going to get any contamination because the air in this room itself is so clean. This thing's replacing the air multiple times per minute. Cleanest room in my house. And you know, you'll hear people say, you know, you shouldn't even be talking or anything when doing this, which is true. You know, obviously I'm making a video here, so just touched my mask. There's little things like that you gotta pay attention to. People will also say turn off your heater, turn off your air conditioner in your house. I don't know how necessary that is. I know I can't be doing that in the summertime because it's going to be extremely hot up here, even in the mornings. And we got 2 good seals on that one. We got our last bag here. See, this isn't even taking very long. Just a little safety spray. Why not? Make sure everything's still nice and clean. You don't want anything falling into these bags. Any bacteria, any mold spores. All it takes is 1 mold spore, and then you're going to be growing green mold instead of white mycelium. Which I think most people would agree. After spending this much time and effort making a bag, the very last thing you want to do is have mold. I mean, this project's going on 25 days now from the beginning when I actually made the liquid culture. You know, I'd be pretty disappointed if I got mold in it at this point. Not that disappointed, but you get the idea. Alright, that's all of our grain, split up between 5-pound blocks. Definitely don't want to reach your hand in there if you can avoid it. I'll seal below that point now, because I reached in there. Saw a piece of grain I wanted to move. Definitely didn't need to do that. But here we are. We can just seal a little bit below the spot we touched. It should be okay, even though my hands were clean. I don't trust it. You don't want to touch the inside of the bag if you can avoid it. I'll also talk about here, I didn't leave these bags in the pressure cooker overnight. Some people recommend that. Me personally, I don't like it because there's a lot of water that builds up here and it doesn't have time to dry off before you seal it. And then you just end up with bad seals. And that doesn't do you any good. I'll double seal this one. Just like I've been doing. And you know, once I'm done with this, I'll clean this up a little bit. We'll do a little shake on the bag, show you how that works before I clean up. And that's the whole project. I mean, yesterday we made the bags, heated them up, pressure cooker, sterilized them, and today we're just, here we are. Turn the fan off so you guys can hear a little bit better. All right. So usually I leave that thing running, but you know, if we're making a video, we'll turn it off when we don't need it. I'll keep my mask on because I don't want to be spitting all over this flow hood. Now we're done being sterile. No longer need to be sterile. Ooh. I should be more careful about that, huh? You know, these bags are sealed now. That's the whole point of sealing them. We don't need to be sterile anymore. So we could leave this like this, and I know some farmers do. Just leave the grains on top, and I probably could have used a 1/4 cup of grains here. Or less. You know, this is a huge amount of grain for this bag. I'm not really sure what to do differently. Probably make smaller grain batches. Or maybe I don't know. Problem is, if I make smaller grain batches, I'm still using the same size bag, so it feels wasteful. But also, you know, I could try to get smaller bags. But I found out these bags are pretty cheap that I'm buying. The smaller bags are actually more expensive. So why would I use smaller bags that cost more? Alright, so one thing I found, you want to get this distributed, but you got this big mass of wood shavings. It's not easy to do. I should say sawdust, really. But what you can do is you can kind of pull up one side of the bag, and you can kind of let the grains waterfall down. So now you got grains from top to bottom on this side. Do the same thing on this side. Pull it up here. Get a little bit of an empty space so your grains can waterfall down. Just like that. And you can do it on the sides a little bit if you need to. Your main thing is you want to get the grains throughout the whole entire substrate, because the goal here is to make some mushrooms, and the faster they grow, the faster you can harvest them. So I'll be able to harvest these quicker because the grains are mixed throughout. And instead of waiting for the mycelium to grow from the top to the bottom, it'll be starting to grow from everywhere. So that's probably good for this one. You don't need to go crazy. You don't want to break your bags, mess up your seals. anything like that, that bag's done. We'll label it once we're done. Label all four at the same time. Kind of a simple thing. First, you want to break this up a little bit. It's a pretty hard mass here. You can't do the waterfall method unless you break this up a little bit first. And then you'll notice that the bottom of the bag, these gussets, tend to get some wood, some sawdust stuck down in there. You can just kind of get the corners clean. The mycelium will grow down there eventually, but if you can get a piece of grain there, it'll go even faster, right? So there's all the grain on the back side here. So same deal, opening up the back a little bit and letting the grains get waterfalled down to the bottom on that side. May not be able to do this side quite as much since the grains are kind of on the other side, but it doesn't have to be perfect here, guys. This step is kind of unnecessary in a way anyway. You can break and shake after a week if you want to. I like doing it right away just to get everything on a good head start. Plus, when I mix this Masters mix up, I'm not stirring it up before I put it in here. You probably saw the pellets. You can see there's different types of material in there. It's not really evenly spread throughout. It's probably not a big deal, but this will get that mixed up too. Make it a nice evenly distributed substrate. Whatever the mushrooms like growing on best, it's everywhere. They got their nutrition and they got their wood, literally mixed up throughout here. Alright, that's it. We'll go ahead and shake these other two bags up. Pretty much the end of the video. If you're done watching, I don't mind if you leave. But I know some people like watching this type of stuff. You do want to avoid getting this wet as much as you can. The filter pack, it can get wet. It's obviously going to get wet in the pressure cooker, right? But from this point on, once it gets wet, you have that chance of a mold spore to land on it. And even if a mold spore lands on it now, it's dry, it's fine. But what if it's wet? That mold can start growing, and that mold will grow right through your filter pack. And now all of a sudden you do have contamination because your filter pack was wet, and the mold grew right through it and dropped your spores in there. So definitely want to avoid getting it wet, keeping it wet. If you do get it wet, don't put it in like a sealed box or something. When it's wet, let it dry out. Don't know why you do that, but it's an idea. And once again, it's probably good enough. This is kind of fun too. I enjoy doing this kind of stuff. It's nothing, not really hard work. Sitting here mixing up sawdust. It's almost like you're playing with sand or something. It's kind of fun. Kind of satisfying in a way. And you start out with this hard, uneven block, and you end up with a nice material at the end that's evenly distributed. It's a little satisfying, I'm not going to lie. A little satisfying doing this. My thing when I work up here is I'm on my attic up here, and the roof is right like a foot above me, and it's 6 in the morning right now, but it's pretty hot up here already. I'm sweating. My biggest contamination risk is my own sweat dripping off my face into my workspace right now, which is pretty funny. Last bag. Getting it shook up one more time. Because these grains are not very well distributed yet. And again, guys, you don't have to do this. I saw a farmer yesterday on a video. He said he just puts a 1/4 cup in, throws them in his colonization room, and they just colonize from top to bottom. And that's probably a lot faster, obviously. A little bit easier, I'm sure. I don't know if it's faster colonization, it's faster work though. I doubt its colonization time is faster. That's why we do this, so we can colonize quickly. Because the longer you wait for that colonization, the longer you have to wait before you can fruit. And if you can do this a little extra step here, why not? And these seals are pretty robust. I have broken them before. I just put tape over it after I broke it. Alright, so these are done. Let me go ahead and label them. But that's pretty much it for the video, guys. I expect these to be ready to harvest maybe in 45 days, maybe in 60 days. I think it takes about that long before they're ready to actually harvest. Maybe even longer. But you could come up here and make 4 bags every week, every 2 weeks. Should have a pretty good supply going, get some succession planning going. Yeah, I'm pretty happy with it. Well, thanks for watching. If you made it this far, I really appreciate it. Hope you learned something. Bye.